Welcome back. Let's continue from our last video. In the previous video, we saw Layla and Dane step through the door that measures a mage's mana strength. Layla's mana appeared as red, typical and expected, but when Dane passed through, the projection turned green, a phenomenon never recorded in history. Stunned, Layla remarked that nothing about Dane had ever been normal, and Dane wholeheartedly agreed. Dane forced a nervous chuckle as Layla asked for clarity, and sweat beaded on his forehead because he was as baffled by the green glow as she was. Dane wondered if his newly awakened ancient magic had broken the test, and doubt swirled within him about whether this bizarre color was the first sign of deeper powers unseen by anyone else. Elsewhere in a vast academy hallway, students moved between lectures and some noticed a finance department student entering in advanced magic class, which triggered whispers of surprise and speculation as people gossiped about a mere number cruncher attending high-level magic. Ornate arches loomed overhead, adding a layer of intrigue to this unexpected crossover of departments. Inside a grand lecture hall, a tall fifth-year named Arthur Diamet entered abruptly, causing younger students to whisper, stunned by his presence, and he mentioned having a delivery after class. Arthur scanned the room for Dane Sogres, Arabella's younger brother, and a new interdisciplinary student, wondering why Dane was not present yet, sounding both curious and impatient. 2 first years stated Dane should arrive but had not, and they looked uneasy, mentioning recent chaos in Hengston District, clearly indicating things at the academy were far from normal. Arthur instructed them to bring Dane the moment he appeared, explaining that because Dane was Arabella's brother, Arthur would maintain special vigilance. The first years sensed deeper motives as Arthur stood listening to the students whisper about Dane's rumored feats, and he wondered if he would finally meet the person creating such a buzz. The room became silent as Dane and Layla walked in, and everyone noted Dane's emerald eyes and Layla's pink hair, eager to see what surprises they might bring. Layla teased Dane about drawing attention everywhere he went, and he grimaced but straightened his uniform, ready to face curious peers and whatever might come next. Across the hall, Arthur smiled knowingly, having waited for this arrival, especially after hearing about the monument's green light, and he prepared to greet Dane in person. Arthur strode over, loudly calling Dane's name, recalling his dramatic entrance ceremony viewed from above, and Arthur seemed larger than life while Dane looked confused by the sudden spotlight. Layla eyed Arthur, suspecting an ulterior motive as his casual tone was oddly familiar for someone they had never officially met. Dane remained guarded, uncertain why Arthur was so eager, and Dane bluntly asked Arthur who he was and why he was acting friendly. Arthur spluttered, and onlookers shuffled, sensing the tension rising between them as Dane insisted Arthur introduce himself properly. Arthur hesitated, realizing Dane was not a timid freshman, and the air hung heavy as both measured each other's boldness. Arthur's face darkened with anger at Dane's refusal to show deference, and silence gripped the hall as Arthur considered this open challenge to his authority. Nearby students whispered warnings about provoking Arthur, fearing Dane's boldness could wreck his academy life, and everyone tensed, bracing for Arthur's reaction. Arthur declared he was there only because Dane was Arabella's brother but found Dane insolent, demanding to know if this attitude tarnished House Sogres' name. Dane calmly noted Arthur's aggressive tone was ruder than any slip in formality, and observers shifted uneasily, torn between admiration and fear of Arthur's wrath. Arthur gritted his teeth, furious that Dane would not bow, and the tension thickened as though the entire hall held its breath, waiting for a spark. Layla and Dane watched Arthur weigh his next move, and he thought letting the slide would undermine his standing, certain Arabella would back him if he retaliated. Blue mana crackled around Arthur's hand as he announced Dane needed discipline, his voice echoing in the ornate hall, and students gasped, fearing an actual duel was imminent. Dane's emerald eyes narrowed, and Arthur's gray-blue gaze hardened as they stood locked in silence, the hall crackling with energy, uncertain who would strike first. Suddenly, Professor Denevo intervened with calm authority, asking if there was a problem, and everyone went silent, the tension shifting to the towering magic department head. Arthur adopted a polite facade, claiming he was merely greeting new first years, and he gestured toward Dane and Layla, hoping to hide his near-violent confrontation. Denevo, tall and broad-shouldered, suggested saving conversations for after class, and Arthur, still fuming, tried to mask his annoyance under the professor's stern gaze. With a dismissive wave, Arthur said he would overlook it this time, and he stepped back, leaving Dane and Layla amid uneasy peers. The tension lingered heavily as Layla quietly warned Dane to stay cautious, sensing Arthur's refined manner hid something menacing. Dane listened, unsettled after their heated face-off, while Arthur, across the hall, told an underclassman to bring Dane to a certain secret spot later, refusing to let this confrontation go unresolved. The student hesitated, worried about involving Arabella's brother, but Arthur dismissed the concern, insisting Arabella would understand his actions when the time came. Meanwhile, Denevo announced early dismissal for orientation but first wanted everyone's mana capacity measured. The class buzzed with excitement and fear for this test, and on his desk sat a gleaming disc studded with crystals. Students gathered close, recognizing the famed mana measurement device, and its soft blue glow drew curious eyes. Denevo demonstrated, placing his hand on it and explaining how each student's magic circles would appear, and everyone watched attentively, eager to see the professor's technique. Brilliant light flared around him, revealing circles in midair, and students looked on, captivated by Denevo's refined monic control, which seemed effortless and precise, gasping at his 8 circles. Whispers spread that this level suited the head of the magic department, and the realization sank in that they were far behind. 2 glowing circles lingered as examples, and Denevo explained darker hues meant stronger capacity, while students could not tear their eyes away from the swirling mana display. He showed that circles did not always appear, but that did not mean zero talent, and blue ribbons swirled around him, mesmerizing everyone with his graceful demonstration. Students lacking visible circles sighed in relief, realizing they might still grow, and hope replaced some anxiety as they watched Denevo's reassuring performance. Denevo paced, reminding them circles were not the full story, as magic relics and hidden powers also shaped potential. The class listened, eager to uncover their true abilities, and purple mana swirled overhead as he stated, everyone in this course should know beginner spells at least, making students sense this orientation was more trial by fire. He revealed a container of glowing blue orbs, explaining these would measure raw power, and their soft radiance excited the class, who realized this test could reveal hidden strengths. Dane eyed the orbs, murmuring thoughtfully, noting that although he had studied various devices, this one felt different, and curiosity flickered in his gaze at the upcoming challenge. Denevo demonstrated psychokinesis, levitating orbs in sparkling blue arcs, encouraging students to copy his smooth control, igniting both excitement and a bit of fear. With a flourish of glowing mana, he said, just like this, as the class tried to memorize every gesture, hoping to match his flawless demonstration. Orbs danced overhead, reflecting on ornate seats, and students watched Denevo's calm mastery impress, quietly bracing for their turn as whispers spread that his precise rune formation and orb manipulation rivaled advanced spells, feeling beyond basic even though he insisted it was the starting point. Layla shrugged, accustomed to big magic feats, yet even she was intrigued by the potential here, excited to push her growing abilities to new heights. Denevo noted beginner spells varied in strength and precision, with each orb needing a separate mana thread, and most novices could only handle 2 or 3 at once. Layla nudged Dane, guessing he might surpass that limit with his odd power, and Dane gazed at the orbs, recalling the ancient magic coursing within him. Denevo called on Arthur to demonstrate, and the room quieted as the older student stepped forward, ready to show if his reputation was deserved. Arthur accepted with a confident grin, secretly aiming to overshadow Dane before they even competed, intensifying their barely concealed rivalry. Seated, Dane recalled Arthur's arrogance earlier, wondering if Arthur's demonstration would reveal the source of his bravado, and tension sparked in Dane's emerald eyes. Arthur placed a hand on the orb, and 4 deep blue mana circles flared behind him, impressing the class with his commanding aura as students gasped at his 4 circles, each shining intensely. Whispers confirmed Arthur's formidable standing, reinforcing the rumors about his skill and power. Denevo patted Arthur's shoulder, praising him, and Arthur modestly credited good teaching, though both knew his achievement was extraordinary. Dane remained watchful as the professor said 4 mana chains typically appeared after graduation, emphasizing Arthur's advanced level, and everyone realized they were witnessing a top-tier talent. He advised first-year students to learn from such experienced peers, and Arthur soaked in the praise, further fueling his confidence. Under the lecture hall's gaze, Arthur, eyeing Dane, warned him not to be impressed yet, vowing to show a huge gap in their abilities as arcs of blue mana shimmered. Dane remained calm, unfazed by Arthur's bravado, silently recalling his own hidden relic powers, and the atmosphere crackled, hinting at a looming showdown. Arthur demonstrated stunning orb control, weaving brilliant blue paths in midair, and windows reflected the spectacle, turning the hall into a swirling tapestry of light. Students leaned forward, marveling at Arthur's precision as he guided each orb effortlessly, showing no sign of weakness. Whispers rose, praising his flawless technique, and someone shouted, "How many is he juggling?" Arthur controlled a clump of orbs at once, and the blackboard faintly glowed, reflecting his intense magical energy. Though sweat beaded on Arthur's brow, he refused to falter, pushing harder, determined to prove his superiority and overshadow Dane in front of everyone. He called Dane a rookie, daring him to match this display, and Dane's face stayed neutral, but the challenge between them became painfully clear. Denevo applauded Arthur, releasing the tension, and the hall erupted in cheers as some wondered which magic tower he would join, while Arthur basked in triumph. Arthur stepped aside, feigning modesty, but anyone who knew him could see his pride swelling. He was convinced he had shown who ruled this classroom. He sneaked one last glance at Dane, itching to witness Dane's attempt, his smug curiosity lingering, waiting to see if the rookie could compete. Dane lowered his gaze, recalling the ancient power coursing within, and readied himself, determined not to hide his abilities, whatever the outcome. Denevo announced that those without visible mana need not feel pressured to continue, but nobody left. Even the timid ones could not resist the chance to see everyone's potential. The class shifted, some gripping desks nervously, but curiosity outweighed fear of failure. They would rather try than miss the spectacle. Denevo nodded, calling students in rows, and each stepped up to measure mana on the orb. Dane and Layla joined the line, and voices whispered around them, but they remained calm as sunlight filtered in, highlighting the academy's grand stage for their test. Layla muttered, "This is more a public display than orientation," expressing her unease performing under watchful eyes. Despite her strong magic background, Dane noticed how the academy encouraged open competition to spur growth, and he readied himself, accepting that proving skill publicly was part of the deal. Others attempted psychokinesis, coaxing orbs with shaky mana, and hearts pounded as Dane's turn neared. Layla stood close, offering silent support. A bright-haired student managed one circle, grinning in relief, thrilled to have any visible mana at all. Another tried but failed entirely, producing no glow, and he left frustrated and embarrassed, with sympathetic murmurs following him back to his seat. A third almost conjured a faint glow, but the orb slipped and thudded. Denevo offered a brief pitying comment, then called the next student. Arthur, arms crossed, muttered that these attempts were pitiful, unimpressed seeing no one near his skill level yet, his scorn evident. A honey-haired student pointed out the next name, Dane Sogres, and immediately the room buzzed, recalling rumors about him and the green barrier. Dane stepped forward, meeting Denevo's steady gaze, and the hall went quiet once again, everyone bracing, anticipating something extraordinary or disastrous. Across the room, Arthur narrowed his eyes, ready to see if Dane's arrogance was justified, watching carefully, expecting a major disappointment. Dane wondered if the ancient magic would produce another strange result like the green curtain, and he steeled himself, hand hovering above the orb. Denevo recalled Dane's perfect solution to a prior advanced exam, suspecting hidden powers at work, and he watched intently, curious about any relic-based anomalies. Students who struggled earlier observed Dane, remembering how tough it was to form even one circle, and they marveled at his calm stance. A few recalled Dane's sharp mind and strategic thinking, suspecting he was more than just talk, especially if ancient magic was truly on his side. Dane finally touched the orb, and a gentle blue spiral formed that intensified, mana ribbons winding around his arm, mesmerizing everyone with their deep glow. Unexpectedly, a surge of power overwhelmed Dane, and sweat dripped as he poured out more mana than intended. The device flickered ominously, hinting at something abnormal. A crimson panel appeared overhead, unable to measure, and everyone gasped. There was no standard color or circle count, just an error. The hall plunged into stunned silence as Dane stood under flashing red light, asking what it meant. No known data covered this bizarre reading, and alarmed whispers rippled through the crowd as Layla and Arthur stared in disbelief. It was clear to everyone that Dane's mana could not be measured, and they sensed this event would have significant consequences. Dane's journey was just beginning as Professor Denevo stood observing the scene. The mana testing machine glowed crimson around Dane, and students whispered with concern. The professor asked why the machine was not producing a typical reading. A crowd gathered, looking at the device's glow, with some wondering if it was malfunctioning and others suspecting Dane's mana was unusual. The tension in the room increased as the red light became brighter. Dane stood slightly separated from the others, his shoulders tense as he considered whether ancient magic was the source of his unusual power. Despite his inner worry, he remained outwardly composed, causing others to speculate about his hidden thoughts. Professor Denevo indicated the glowing runes on the machine, emphasizing its accuracy in detecting everyone's true strength, yet it could not read Dane's mana. The students understood they were observing something beyond the realm of typical magic. Dane watched the flickering red light, puzzled that a machine designed to measure anything was unable to measure his mana. Students whispered that this situation might be unprecedented in the academy's history. Several students suggested the device was not working correctly. Professor Denevo instructed them to prepare a backup orb test, assuring everyone. Dane, feeling both anxious and determined, agreed to the second test. Arthur Diamet watched with a smug expression, suggesting that Dane's inability to be measured meant he was not as impressive as others. He stood with crossed arms, pleased by the possibility that Dane might not be exceptional. Dane walked towards a large glass cylinder containing glowing orbs for the traditional test. A feeling of nervous anticipation filled the hall as everyone waited to see if this method would finally reveal his power. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and directed energy into the orbs. Soft blue mana moved around his hand, indicating a strong magic beneath his calm demeanor. Suddenly, a bright light appeared and all the orbs rose in a swirling display. Silence filled the hall as onlookers witnessed an unexpected demonstration of control and impressive magical ability. Two classmates stared, surprised that a first-year student could raise every orb, their expressions showing both admiration and a touch of envy for Dane's apparent talent. Voices could be heard saying that even raising a few orbs was impressive, but Dane had elevated them all. Bright light moved upwards towards the ceiling, and Professor Denevo also seemed very surprised by this display. Arthur and a female student looked upwards, acknowledging Dane's remarkable abilities, their expressions indicating they had underestimated him. Arthur's surprise grew, and he struggled to accept that the person he had mocked might be more skilled than everyone else. Doubt and worry appeared on his face, suggesting he was reconsidering his previous opinions. Layla Thermine watched, appearing both amused and slightly annoyed, as she was accustomed to Dane's unusual achievements, yet even she seemed pleasantly surprised by the impressive display. Dane stood under the swirling orbs, feeling amazed by his own power. He thought that ancient magic might be further enhancing his abilities as shimmering blue lights moved across the halls, walls, and ceilings. A spark of amusement appeared in Dane's eyes, and he decided to shape the floating orbs into something more elaborate, wanting to create a memorable magical performance for everyone. Dane directed shimmering mana ribbons, filling the air with bright blue patterns. The entire room shimmered as these radiant strands captured everyone's attention in an enchanting display. Professor Denevo watched with disbelief, sweat appearing on his forehead, and stated that Dane's mana control was extraordinary, clearly unable to fully comprehend such a remarkable demonstration of power. High above, the orbs formed the symbol of House Sogres, a lion and a snake. Soft sounds of surprise echoed through the hall as they realized Dane had shaped his family's noble crest using pure mana. Twisting lines of mana revealed a majestic lion intertwined with a serpent. Students stared, recognizing this iconic emblem and understanding the prestige of House Sogres displayed in the air. Small groups of onlookers whispered about Dane's brilliance, recalling his renowned sisters Claire and Arabella. This spectacle felt even more astonishing, leaving everyone excited. Professor Denevo stood in surprise, remarking that even Arabella had never attempted something like this. Dane smiled modestly, genuinely surprised yet proud of how easily he had formed the grand crest. Layla patted Dane's shoulder, advising him not to overexert himself, and mentioned it was her turn with the orbs, although everyone was still talking about the impressive House Sogres crest above. After Layla's attempt, Professor Denevo praised Dane's performance, joking that even Sidra, the elusive mage who avoided most students, would be pleased to mentor such a talented individual. Dane thanked him politely, his eyes showing excitement about what else his core circle fusion might achieve. He remained outwardly calm but was inwardly eager to explore his growing powers further. A few older students whispered that Dane had studied under the former Tower Master, which explained his enrollment in the advanced track. Realizing they were witnessing raw, untapped power, they exchanged knowing glances. Arthur remained uneasy, speaking sharply to a friend who suggested Dane might surpass him. Anger and envy grew within Arthur as he struggled to maintain his composure amidst Dane's increasing fame. Clenching his fist, Arthur silently criticized House Sogres' immense talent, resenting being overshadowed again, which fueled a growing resentment that would likely influence his future actions. Dane was seen calmly talking with two peers while Arthur observed from a distance, his tense muttering indicating he was reconsidering a direct confrontation, knowing he could not easily overpower Dane. Arthur vowed to himself that he would never lose to Dane, yet a single look at Dane's calm smile reminded Arthur that brute force would not work. He considered another strategy to deal with his rival, imagining befriending or controlling Dane instead, thinking that if he could not defeat him, perhaps he could influence. That's a wrap. The story continues in my next video. Like and subscribe to stay notified.